Hello and welcome to another episode of the Identity Navigator. My name is Rohit and today we are going to talk about very foundational identity and access management component, IDaaS or Identity as a Service. So let's talk about what IDaaS truly is. How does it differ from IDPs? How is that different from LDAP? Maybe look at some migration considerations because this is something that everybody in identity and access management, a practitioner or at a management layer, should know about. But before that, last few weeks have been very hectic. I was fortunate enough to appear on the Identity Jedi podcast. David and Samir, who are the host of that show, are friends, and we had a great conversation. So if you haven't checked it out, I will suggest to go and check it out. This podcast has also have been doing well. We are now at 98 subscribers, so there are 98 people who have subscribed, which is frankly mind blowing for me. So just in case you haven't subscribed, please do. I don't know why, but like all right, 100 would be cool. So if you haven't, please do that. I would really appreciate it. But before we deep dive into our topic today, a word from our sponsor, who is absolutely nobody. So there's no sponsors. Hopefully, there is no ad in the platform that you are listening to. And let's really deep dive into IDaaS introduction and migration considerations. Now, while I was researching for this podcast, the US federal government is such a smart resource to dive. A few weeks ago, we dived into President Biden's executive order on artificial intelligence or Gen AI. Now, the inspiration of this episode is the federal government guidelines on the cloud identity management playbook. So, if you haven't checked it out, it's a great resource to look at. This is the word of as a service. Let's look into IDaaS. Let's look into some of the considerations as we expand the use of enterprise identities in a cloud operating model. So we had relational databases, or we have relational databases, which are these tables contained in a database which is optimized for read and write. Then we also have our lightweight directory access protocol directories or LDAP, which are optimized for read. So you can write once and read multiple times because think about it. How many times do we change our password? Maybe once in 30 days or once in 90 days or more. But we query the directory that stores the database multiple times a day. So these LDAP directories are optimized for read. The relational databases are optimized for read and write. But more importantly, LDAP also stores identities and attributes and authentication information, and that allows it to act as an identity provider. Right. So we have relational databases, basic read-write operations. Then we have LDAP, which are optimized for read. And when LDAP stores identities and attributes and authentication information, that could be termed as an identity provider. So when we talk about identity provider, the first thing that comes to mind is Active Directory. So let's look at how did Active Directory come into picture. So when companies started using computers in 1980, the computers were connected to each other via peer-to-peer networking. This means that each system was its own boss and configuration had to be done manually on each or rely on end users. I'm getting to GPOs or group policy objects, but you had to do something, you had to configure the browsers, either you do it manually on each of the system or you rely on the end users to carry those steps out on their individual systems. And then Microsoft created Active Directory in 2000, which had a concept of domain controller for centralized management of computers. So this DC or domain controller, this was a server with a database of all objects, and this database was called Active Directory. Now, obviously, we need to have more than one DC for high availability and replication is enabled and good things, right? But this was where Active Directory was introduced, and this is the problem that it was solving. Now, in each computer in the domain can now authenticate against the domain controller or DC. So there were protocol like Kerberos and NTLM which were being used. So now each computer was authenticating against a centralized domain controller. Also, the configurations could be carried out in a centralized manner, and then Microsoft built upon it by using a DNS server for name resolution, and then file servers, and then firewall came through, which for the internet traffic flows. So now all computers were managed centrally, and this was done by a group policy objects. But I digress. So this is where AD was introduced, and now we have IDaaS, or Identity as a Service. A prime example for this is Azure Active Directory or Entra ID now. So how does an IDaaS difference from an IDP? An IDaaS is typically an identity provider that offers single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and directory services in a single platform as a core set. It also may provide additional features. The advantage of IDaaS is that it centralizes and consolidates multiple identity capabilities and delivers them on a platform that offers the same cloud benefits such as reliability, scalability, and security. Migrating to IDaaS allows us to provide identity services rather than operate and maintain the infrastructure, right? So we have normal databases, relational databases, have gone into their separate direction with MongoDBs and NoSQL and graph databases. We also had LDAP, which were optimized for read. Once they were storing authentication and authorization related information, those were called as identity provider. We then looked into how AD came into picture, and finally how did Azure AD or IDaaS came into the picture. So before we dive into more of this IDaaS, let's look into some of the key terms that you should be aware of. And the first key term is assertion. So imagine if you have a special pass to enter your favorite playground. This pass is like an assertion in IDaaS. When you go to the playground, you show this pass to the guard. The pass tells the guard who you are and that you are allowed to come in because you have already been checked before. So instead of having to check you in every time, the guard trusts the pass. In IDaaS, when you want to use different website or apps, you don't want to keep entering your username and password every time. So just like your special pass, IDaaS gives you a special assertion. And I just made air quote sign with my hands. I don't know why, but just like your special pass, IDaaS gives you a special assertion after you log in once. This assertion tells other websites or apps that you are already authenticated. So you can get in without needing to type your username and password again. It's like a digital pass that helps you get around the internet playground safely and easily. In the context of IDaaS, an assertion typically refers to a security token that contains information about the user identity and authentication status. I've also seen that there is a lot of conflicting information about tokens. They have been made very complicated. But tokens are nothing but a collection of data. That is all that token is. It's just a collection of data. It could be data like an ID or a username or anything. So any collection of data could be called as a token. And these assertions or tokens are commonly used in the process of single sign-on and authentication within IDaaS system. So when a user attempts to access a service or application that is integrated with an IDaaS solution, the IDaaS provider generates an assertion after the user successfully authenticates. This assertion contains details such as user identity, authentication method used, maybe time to live, maybe is refresh allowed, and possibly other attributes or claims related to user's authorization. The assertion is then securely transmitted to the service or application that the user is trying to access. Upon receiving the assertion, the service or application can validate it. So they have something called as assertion validation services, typically by verifying digital signatures or using other cryptographic methods to ensure its authenticity and integrity. Once validated, the service or application can then use the information contained in the assertion to grant the user access without requiring them to log in again. So you might have heard multiple times in the context of your identity and access management program that you have a bunch of legacy applications. These legacy applications are the one who cannot consume these assertions. So it's a very crude or rudimentary definition, but this is what differentiates a legacy application from a modern application. So overall, assertions play a crucial role in enabling secure and seamless authentication and access management within IDaaS environments. The next thing that you need to know, or the key term that you need to know before we deep dive into IDaaS, is cloud computing. Now, most of you are already aware of it. No worries if you aren't. Cloud computing is like renting a computer, software, or other resource over the internet instead of buying and managing them yourself. Imagine you need a computer to do some homework. Instead of buying a computer and setting it up at home, you can use a computer that's already set up and ready to go. Cloud computing works similarly. Instead of buying servers, storage, or software, you can rent them from a cloud provider over the internet. So there are three different type of cloud services model, and we really need to understand this. There is infrastructure as a service. So what are you renting here? You are renting things like servers, storage, and networking hardware. It's like renting a house which is unfurnished, where you can bring your own furniture and decorations. The second type of cloud service model is platform as a service, or commonly referred as PaaS. With PaaS, you rent a platform for developing and deploying software applications. So, what does platform means? It's like development tools, databases, servers. So, in terms of our analogy of houses, it's like renting a fully furnished apartment where you can move in and start living right away. And then the third is software as a service. This is where you rent software applications that run on the cloud provider's infrastructure. So you don't have to worry about installation, maintenance, or updates. It's like using a streaming service to watch movies instead of buying DVDs. Cloud computing offers several benefits, including flexibility, scalability, cost effectiveness, and accessibility from anywhere via an internet connection. It is widely used for businesses and individuals for various purposes, from hosting websites and applications to storing and analyzing data. And things like storing and analyzing data requires such a large computing power that cloud computing models make immediate sense. So IDaaS is normally provided as a SaaS offering or software as a service offering, or is it a PaaS offering, platform as a service? Think about it. In the meanwhile, I also did spoke about launching a couple of cohorts the last time that we spoke, and I have been able to launch two free cohorts recently. One of them is for business analysts who are trying to make their career in identity and access management, and other is for mid-level management like managers and uh, assistant directors, directors, senior managers, and senior directors. All of the people that have been granted access to these free cohorts have unfortunately lost their job recently. So that has been tough, and so many of them have been working, especially the management cohort. So many of them have been working in the same company for so long, and they were pretty good at what they did in terms of, they understood the processes within the company, how the change management happened, uh, and how the funding was approved. But these skills were sometimes not transferable to other companies, and they lost track of the newer concepts within identity and access management. So I'm just trying to polish their knowledge in the new things within identity and access management, and I'm hoping that everybody gets a job very, very soon. I am also planning to launch another cohort, time permitting. So this would be third free cohort. Still working on it. Timing is definitely an issue, but I'm trying to talk to somebody who I can partner with, and probably they can come in and uh, help me prepare some material for that. But those conversations are in very beginning stages. So I'll keep you posted on how that goes. If any of your friend have been in this unfortunate situation, do ask them to reach out to me, and I'll see how I can help. Another key term that you need to understand is credential services provider or credential service provider, commonly referred as CSPs. Now, as the name itself says, it issues and manages credentials. So, a credential service provider is an entity that manages and provides digital credentials to individual or entities for authentication purposes. So, digital credentials sounds fancy, but they are like username, password, digital certificates, biometric data, or any other form of authentication tokens. CSPs play a crucial role in identity and access management systems, particularly in scenario where secure authentication is required for accessing resources, system, or applications. So they may offer multiple or various authentication methods and technologies, including username and password authentication. So they might manage a database of users' account and passwords, verifying the identity of the user based upon their credentials. They might have two-factor authentication, 2FA, or multi-factor authentication, MFA. So CSPs may offer additional layers of security by requiring users to provide multiple forms of authentication, such as passwords combined with a one-time code sent to their mobile device. Digital certificates, CSPs may issue and manage digital certificates used for secure communication and authentication in applications like SSL/TLS for website security or digital signatures for document authentication. Another example would be biometric authentication. So some CSPs may utilize biometric data such as fingerprints, facial recognition, or iris scans for authentication purposes. So CSPs are often used in conjunction with IAM solutions to ensure secure and reliable access control in enterprise environments, online services, and digital platforms. They help organization authenticate users securely and manage their access to resources while managing the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the famous CIA triad of sensitive data and systems. Now, let's look at some of the examples of CSPs. Microsoft Azure Active Directory, Azure AD or AAD or Entra ID now. For those who are not aware of it, Microsoft has renamed their Azure Active Directory offerings to Entra ID now. So Entra ID is a cloud-based identity and access management services provided by Microsoft. It offers a range of authentication methods, including username, password, MFA. It's a very advanced tool, and it is a de facto leader in the industry today when it comes to CSPs or IDaaS. And we'll come to that later. Hold on to that thought. Okta. Okta, I think, comes very close second to Azure Active Directory. Okta is a leading identity management platform that provides SSO, MFA, and other identity related services. It offers a centralized platform for managing user identities across various applications and services. So even though Okta is not the de facto leader, but Okta has got some integration capabilities which are even superior to Microsoft Azure Active Directory. Ping identity. Ping offers a comprehensive suite of IAM solutions like Identity Federation, SSO, API security, and it is used for both workforce and consumer identities. Auth0, which was recently acquired by, and I say recently, relatively recently acquired by Okta as their consumer identity and access management offering. Google Cloud Identity, ForgeRock. So these CSPs offer a range of features and capabilities to help organizations manage user identities, authentication, and control accesses to resource effectively. Now you might ask me, everything that I just said also holds true for an IDaaS. So what's the difference between a CSP and identity as a service? Right? And believe me, in real world, it doesn't matter. Every example that I just gave you, Azure Active Directory, Okta, Ping, Auth0, Google Cloud Identity, ForgeRock, they could all be termed as CSPs or IDaaS. So you will never in real life worry about, oh, are they a CSP or IDaaS? This is more of an interview question, which I really hate, but it is what it is. So just in case you are asked, the difference lies in the focus and scope within the realm of identity and access management. Now, what does it mean? So for CSPs primarily deal with the provisioning, management, and authentication of digital creds used for accessing multiple resources like systems and applications. So CSPs manage and provide authentication mechanisms such as username, password, digital certificates, biometric data, and other form of authentication tokens. Right? And identity as a services, this focus is a comprehensive cloud-based service that provides a broad range of identity and access management functionalities. So SSO, federation, access management, user provisioning, directory services. So IDaaS solution aim to centralize and streamline identity management processes across cloud-based and on-premise applications, as well as manage user identities for both employees and customers. So in summary, while CSPs focus primarily on providing authentication mechanism and managing digital credentials, IDaaS solutions offer a broader set of identity management functionalities, including authentication, access management, user provisioning, often delivered as a cloud-based service. So an Active Directory could also be a CSP, but it won't be an IDaaS, right? So many IDaaS solutions incorporate CSP's capabilities as part of their offering to provide comprehensive identity management solution. So every IDaaS is a CSP, but not every CSP is an IDaaS. But these are all theoretical questions. Good to know, but of very limited value in our day-to-day work, especially if you are a practitioner. Another thing that you need to know is federation. And let's go back to our favorite park example. Now let's imagine you have a special membership card for your favorite park, but you want to visit another park across town. Now instead of needing a new card just for that park, imagine if your original card could be used there too. Sounds fancy. And federation is exactly that. When you go to a new park, which is like a different website or an online service, you don't need a new card, new username or password. Instead, your original park tells the new park that you are a trusted visitor. So you can enjoy the new park without needing a new card. And that's thanks to federation. It makes things simpler and more convenient when you want to access different places online without needing separate accounts for each one. So, as you know, Park A and Park B need to have some sort of trust relation so that the second park is trusting the first park. And also at the same time, if you are just thinking about federation, always think about it as a cross domain single sign on or single sign on between two different companies. And that is essentially what federation is. So the technology, processes, policies, standards that allow an agency to share digital identity, attribute, and credentials between trust domains or organizations is called federation. And how does it happen? It happens through an assertion. So federation in the context of IAM refers to the process of establishing trust relationship between different IAM systems or domains. It enables users from one organization or domain to securely access resources or services in another organization or domain without the need for separate authentication or user accounts. Excuse me. In terms of federation, you need to know about identity provider, service provider, security token, and trust relationship, right? And with federation, you can have single sign-on. That is obviously a reduced administrative overhead. You have enhanced security, interoperability. Uh, what else about federation? Popular federation protocols includes SAML or Security Assertion Markup Language, OpenID Connect, and OAuth. These protocols define standards for exchanging authentication and authorization data between identity provider and service providers. So you know what? Why don't we look into what IDP and SP is for a second? So the identity provider, the organization or domain where the user's identity is stored and authenticated, is known as the identity provider. This is our first park. When a user attempts to access a resource in another domain, the second park, the IDP authenticates the users and generates a security token that contains information about users' identity and permission. Right? So identity provider is why that park A, the first park. Service provider, the organization or domain that hosts the resource or service being accessed by the user. So this is the second park. Rather than creating its own pass, it is trusting the pass of the first park because that first park is acting as an identity provider. So the SP, the service provider, trusts the IDP, the identity provider, to authenticate users on its behalf. Park 2 is saying to Park 1, all right, you authenticate the users, give them the pass, and I trust you, brother, that or sister, that I will let them in. Security token. After successful authentication, The IDP issues a security token containing assertions about the user's identity and attribute. This token is securely transmitted to the SP, right? So, what is an assertion? It's a collection of data. What is a token? That it contains assertions, right? So basically the token contains a bunch of data that, hey, this user has been authenticated, this is the username, this is the time that it authenticated, this is when the token is valid for, and all the other things that you want to put in. This is the role that the token has, anything else that you want to put in it. And then you just need to securely get it to service provider, right, without anybody else getting a hold of it. And that is why, you would hear a lot of things around token replay attacks or stolen tokens and things like this, because if the data can be manipulated, then you can get access to that second park by manipulating that token, right? And there are obviously ways to secure that, and we will get into some of those hopefully soon. Now, park B is trusting park A, or these two parks are trusting each other. That wouldn't happen just by default, right? So there is a trust relationship. The SP verifies the security token issued by IDP to ensure its authenticity and integrity, right? And that trust relationship needs to be created. So this is where, when we are setting up the federation between two different organizations or domains, this is what we are saying. Hey, this is the trust relationship. This is the protocol that would be used. This is the type of data that would be said. This is the URL for validating the assertion or token that you would receive, and all these good things are actually being configured when you are setting up the federation. It's as simple as that. There is nothing fancy to it. But don't tell it to anybody who is from non-IM background. Tell them, hey, federation is very fancy and it would probably take us a few weeks to configure. But now, it's simple. Enable the trust, create the protocol, identify the protocol, and give the two systems everything that it needs to have that trust within themselves and have a way to authenticate the tokens or assertions, and that's pretty much it. Other things that you would like to know about in terms of IDaaS would be machine identity or workload identity, right? So it's a big thing. You need to have machine identities like servers and switches and printers and other hardware devices. And it's especially important because now machines can assume roles in some of the cloud providers, right? So it's very, very important for us to be able to have a workload identity and access management program very similar to uh, employee or a user identity and access management program. And then there are also something called as NPEs or non-person entities. So any non-human with a digital identity in cyberspace. NPEs and workload identity are sometimes used interchangeably, but NPE is like a superset of everything non-human, whereas workload contains machine identities like servers, switches, printers. So again, this is just a theoretical difference, but for our practitioners' knowledge, we don't have to deep dive too much into it. So let's talk about IDaaS 101. So identity is the new network. Everybody knows this now, hopefully. Identity is foundational to security both on-premise and within cloud environments. Right? It is the first touch point to access data and impact user experience. So in cloud environments, applications access acts as a parameter to protect application and workload, because a genuine user could be coming from, let's say, Georgia, Atlanta, and a malicious user could be coming in from Georgia, Atlanta. So that difference doesn't hold true. Traditionally, if somebody is coming from within the office or the traffic is from within the office versus outside of the office, a location was a good indicator of the threat, but not so much. So why do we say identity is the new network? Exactly for this line, that in cloud environments, applications access acts as a parameter to protect application and workload. Identity is the first touch point to access data and impact user experience. So traditionally, to an as a service model, you would hear about as a service so much more now. So transitioning to an as a service model allows buy capabilities rather than invest in infrastructure. The most common cloud identity examples is identity as a service, IDaaS, and IDaaS is, we have talked about IDaaS a lot. So let's talk about differences between an on-premise identity provider and IDaaS. And as I look at the time, we'll probably stop here and then we'll take up cloud identity journey steps in one of the following podcasts, right? So now you understand what IDaaS is. Now, how do you start your cloud identity journey? So difference between on-premise identity provider and IDaaS. An IDP, you have complete control over all configuration settings. Whereas in IDaaS, privileges are limited to those allowed by the services. Right? You cannot have everything. It's a cloud service model. There is a shared responsibility. Rapid elasticity. In legacy IDP, they are limited but provide potentially automated scaling to the number of dedicated servers. Whereas in IDaaS, you can theoretically have unlimited and automated scaling, and this is transparent to the user. And this is typically included in the base IDaaS pricing. Measured service. So IDP prices usually involves perpetual based licensing or the number of instances, whereas in IDaaS, pricing is based upon the total number of users, active users, applications. Resource pooling. In IDP, hardware is dedicated commercial or government furnished equipment maintained by an agency or a company or an organization, whereas in IDaaS, hardware is shared. Commercial hardware that is owned and maintained by a CSP or a cloud service provider. Do not, I My apologies. CSP could stand for both cloud service provider and credential services provider. So I meant cloud service provider. And broad network access. An IDP is about creating an internet accessible service may require additional load balancers, right? Uh, Network bandwidth, user device configurations, geographical dispersion. So you need to do a lot of things within IDP for it to have a broad network access. However, in IDaaS, it is globally available through geographical based CDNs or content delivery networks that offers up to or exceeding 4 nines reliability, which is 99.99%, sometimes even 5 nines, which is 99.999%. So the adoption of cloud services adds challenges. Cloud services obviously operate on a shared responsibility model where cloud service provider holds some responsibility and the customer holds some other responsibilities. So no one should consider the cloud secure simply because the cloud service provider holds responsibility for security. At the same time, by definition, cloud is not less secure just because it is available or accessible via internet. It really depends upon the controls that you are putting in place. So one is never more secure than the other by default. And principles such as least privilege, role-based access, MFA, and risk, they should always be considered irrespective of you are using it on premise or even if you are using a cloud-based provider. These are always customer responsibilities, no matter the cloud service model, PaaS, SaaS, infrastructure as a service in use. As I look over to the time, I think we are right at the sweet spot. I did get some feedback about uh, the music being a little disruptive, or it is difficult to follow with so much of music blasting in the background. So I'm not going to promise you, but I'm going to save this episode and see if I can let go of my love for music within that episode. So, fingers crossed, I will let you know how it goes, or probably you will know it before I do. But thank you all for listening and tuning in. I really appreciate all of you. Uh, and until next time, this is Rohit, your identity navigator.